It started as an ordinary afternoon, the kind that passes without leaving a mark, the kind that feels safe simply because nothing unusual has happened yet. On June 23, 2018, 12 boys and their assistant coach entered the Tam Luang Cave in northern Thailand, a place they already knew, a place that felt more like an adventure than a risk. Their bicycles were left outside, a quiet sign that they would return soon, that this was never meant to last long. Inside the cave, the air was cool and still, the walls stretching inward in winding paths that invited exploration. They moved deeper, talking, laughing, following the familiar curiosity that had brought them there before. Nothing suggested danger. Nothing warned them to turn back. Outside, the weather began to change. Rain started lightly, almost unnoticed, but in that region, rain has a way of building quickly. What begins as something harmless can become something overwhelming in a matter of time. Inside the cave, they kept moving forward, unaware that the environment around them was already shifting. Water began to enter the cave system, slowly at first, flowing into lower sections, filling narrow passages that had been clear just moments before. It did not rush in all at once. It crept forward, silent and steady, until the path behind them was no longer the same. When the group finally turned back, expecting to leave the way they had come, they encountered something unexpected. The ground was wetter. The air felt heavier. And soon they saw it clearly. The passage ahead was no longer open. Water had taken its place. At first, it may have looked like something manageable, an obstacle that could be crossed with effort. But as they got closer, it became clear that this was not a shallow pool. The water was rising, the visibility was low, and the current was unpredictable. None of them had the equipment or the experience to move through a flooded cave safely. They had a choice to make, and it had to be made quickly. Moving forward was no longer possible. Waiting near the entrance was too dangerous as the water continued to rise. So they did what seemed like the safest option in that moment. They moved deeper into the cave, searching for higher ground, a place where the water could not reach them. That decision changed everything. Every step inward increased the distance between them and the outside world. The cave narrowed in places, opened in others, twisting in ways that made direction harder to track. Eventually, they reached a chamber above the rising water, a place where they could stop, where they could sit, where they could wait. But waiting came with uncertainty. They had no food, limited light, no way to communicate. Time began to lose its meaning as minutes stretched into something longer, something heavier. The silence inside the cave became part of the experience, pressing in around them, reminding them of how far they were from safety. Outside, concern began to grow when they did not return. Their bicycles were still at the entrance, untouched, a quiet signal that something was wrong. Local authorities were alerted, and soon rescue teams arrived, preparing to enter the cave. The first attempts revealed the scale of the problem immediately. The passages were flooded, visibility was almost zero, and the water continued to rise. What had been a simple path hours earlier had turned into a complex and dangerous environment. Moving through it now required skill, equipment, and careful planning. Inside, the group remained on higher ground, holding on to the belief that someone would come. They did not know how long it would take. They did not know how difficult the journey to reach them would be. They only knew that going back was no longer an option. Outside, rescuers faced a challenge unlike anything routine. The cave system was long and unpredictable, with sections that required diving through narrow, submerged passages. It was not just a search. It was a race against conditions that were still changing. Rain continued to fall. Water levels continued to rise. And with each passing hour, the situation became more complicated. Because reaching them was only the first problem. Bringing them out would be something else entirely. Outside the cave, the situation escalated quickly from concern to urgency. Rescue teams expanded, drawing in specialists who understood that this was no longer a routine operation. The flooded passages had transformed the cave into a maze of submerged corridors, where movement required precision, experience, and complete control under pressure. Local responders were soon joined by international cave divers, individuals trained to operate in environments where visibility disappears and every movement must be calculated. Even for them, this was not simple. The cave system was long, complex, and partially unknown in its deeper sections. Maps existed, but conditions had changed. Water had altered the terrain, turning familiar paths into dangerous obstacles. Inside the cave, the group remained in darkness, their situation unchanged, yet growing more uncertain with time. Light sources were limited, and conserving energy became essential. The coach encouraged them to stay calm, to sit still, to breathe slowly, reducing panic and preserving strength. It was a quiet form of survival, one that depended on patience as much as endurance. Outside, divers began pushing into the cave, navigating through tight, flooded passages where the water was murky and cold. In many sections there was no room to turn around. The path forward required squeezing through narrow gaps, carrying equipment, managing oxygen, and maintaining a clear sense of direction in a space where visibility could drop to zero. Every movement had risk. A single mistake could be fatal. And yet they continued. Guidelines were placed along the route, thin lines that marked the path, ensuring that divers could find their way back. Without them, navigation would be almost impossible. The cave twisted and turned in ways that could disorient even the most experienced professionals. As the search progressed, distance became a major challenge. The boys were not near the entrance. They were deep inside, far beyond the first flooded sections, in an area that required hours of careful movement just to reach. Time passed. Search efforts continued. But there was still no contact. Uncertainty grew. Because the longer it took to find them, the more difficult it became to believe they were still alive. Inside the cave, the group had no awareness of how close or how far rescuers were. They could not measure time accurately. They could not see daylight. Their world had narrowed to a single space, a chamber surrounded by darkness and water, where the only thing they could do was wait. Days began to pass. Outside, the scale of the operation expanded even further. Pumps were brought in to remove water from the cave, an attempt to reduce flooding and create safer conditions for divers. It was a slow process, limited by the amount of water continuously flowing in due to ongoing rain. Weather became a constant threat. Every rainfall increased the difficulty. Every rise in water levels pushed rescuers back. And still the search continued. Divers moved deeper, following the guidelines, navigating through sections that required full submersion, careful breathing, and complete focus. Communication between teams was limited, relying on coordination outside the cave and trust inside it. Then, after days of searching, after hours of movement through darkness and water, something changed. A sign. A trace. Not confirmation yet, but enough to continue forward with renewed urgency. Because somewhere ahead, in a space cut off from the outside world, 12 boys and their coach were still waiting. And the distance between them and rescue was slowly, carefully being reduced. By that point, the operation had become something far beyond a local rescue. It had turned into a global effort, drawing attention from across the world, not because of spectacle but because of what was at stake. 13 lives, trapped deep inside a flooded cave system, cut off from light, from time, and from any certainty that help would arrive before conditions became impossible. Inside the cave, the group remained in their chamber, surrounded by darkness, their world reduced to a small space of rock and silence. The coach worked to keep them calm, encouraging stillness, slowing their breathing, helping them conserve energy. It was not just physical survival anymore. It was mental control. Because panic in a place like that could be as dangerous as the environment itself. Hunger had begun to set in. Thirst was constant. And the absence of light made time feel distorted, stretched, almost unreal. They did not know how many days had passed. They did not know how far away help was. They only knew that waiting was the only option. Outside, divers continued pushing deeper into the cave, moving through sections that required full submersion, carrying oxygen tanks, navigating through tight spaces where even turning the body could be difficult. Visibility was almost non-existent. In many areas they relied entirely on touch, following the guideline rope placed along the route, trusting it to lead them forward and back again. Each dive required planning. Each movement required precision. And each mistake could be fatal. The deeper they went, the more complex the cave became. Passages narrowed, ceilings dropped, and the water flow changed in unpredictable ways. Some sections forced divers to remove equipment just to pass through, pushing tanks ahead of them before squeezing through narrow gaps, knowing that hesitation could cost time they did not have. But still they continued. Because turning back meant leaving the search unfinished. Because somewhere ahead the boys were still there. After days of searching, one of the dive teams pushed further than before, moving beyond previously reached points, following the line into a section of the cave that had not yet been fully explored under these conditions. The water was thick, visibility near zero, the environment silent except for the sound of controlled breathing through equipment. Then something changed. The passage opened slightly. The water level lowered. And ahead, in the dim reflection of their lights, there was movement. At first it was uncertain. Shapes in the darkness. Then clearer. Figures. 13 of them. Alive. Sitting together on a raised section of rock, thin, exhausted but still there. The moment was quiet, almost unreal, After days of searching, after uncertainty, after doubt had begun to grow, the outcome shifted in an instant. They had been found. The divers approached carefully, their lights illuminating faces that had not seen daylight for days. Communication was simple at first, basic questions, confirmation that they were all there, all alive. "How many of you?" 13. That answer changed everything. Outside the cave, the confirmation spread quickly. The boys were alive. The mission was no longer a search. It had become something else. A rescue. But finding them was only the beginning. Because the challenge that remained was even more difficult than locating them. They were deep inside the cave. The passages between them and the entrance were still flooded. The journey out would require navigating through sections that even experienced divers found difficult. And the boys were not divers. They were children. The reality of the situation became clear almost immediately. There was no simple way to bring them out. Walking was not possible. Swimming was not an option. Waiting for the water to recede could take weeks, and their condition might not allow that. Every possible solution carried risk, some more than others. And now the operation faced its most critical phase, because reaching them had required skill and persistence. Bringing them out would require something even more difficult. A decision. Once the boys were found alive inside the cave, the focus of the entire operation shifted instantly. Relief was replaced by urgency because survival was no longer the question. Extraction was. And extraction, under those conditions, was far more dangerous than the search itself. The situation was carefully analyzed from every angle. The distance between the chamber and the entrance was long. Sections of the route were completely submerged. Visibility was near zero. Some passages were so narrow that even experienced divers had struggled to move through them. Now imagine guiding children through that same path. Children who had never dived. Children who could panic. Children who could make a single movement that would put both themselves and their rescuers in danger. The complexity of the problem became clear very quickly. There was no easy solution. Every option carried risk, and in some cases that risk was extreme. One idea was to wait. Wait for the water levels to drop. Wait for the rainy season to pass. But that could take weeks, possibly months. And the boys had no food, limited medical support, and an environment that could become unstable at any moment. Waiting was not safe. Another idea was to teach them to dive. To equip them with gear and guide them out through the flooded passages. But this was not open water. This was a cave. Dark, narrow, unforgiving. Even trained divers found it difficult. For untrained children, the margin for error was almost zero. Still, the idea remained, because there were no better options. Rescue teams, including some of the most experienced cave divers in the world, began planning a strategy that had never been attempted on this scale. Each boy would need to be guided individually. Each would require equipment, oxygen, and constant supervision through every section of the cave. The route would be divided into segments. Divers would be positioned along the path. Each movement would be controlled. Each step calculated. Because there would be no room for improvisation once the extraction began. Inside the cave, preparations started as well. Supplies were brought in. Food, medical equipment, and basic necessities reached the boys, stabilizing their condition and giving rescuers time to plan. Doctors evaluated them. Divers explained what would happen. But explaining something like that does not remove fear. It only prepares the mind to face it. Outside, weather continued to complicate everything. Rain threatened to undo progress, raising water levels and reducing visibility even further. Pumps worked continuously to remove as much water as possible, but the cave system was too large, too complex to control completely. Time was limited, and everyone involved knew it. Then, during the operation, a moment occurred that changed the tone of everything. A former Thai Navy SEAL, participating in the rescue effort, lost his life while placing oxygen tanks along the route. He had been part of the preparation, part of the effort to make the path safer for the boys. And he did not make it back. That moment made the risk undeniable. This was not just difficult, it was deadly. If something went wrong during extraction, there would be no easy recovery. The decision that followed was not taken lightly. It was the only path forward. The boys would be brought out one by one, guided through the flooded cave by expert divers, each journey taking hours, each step depending on precision, control, and absolute focus. There would be no second chances, no room for panic, no margin for error. Because inside that cave, under those conditions, even the smallest mistake could change everything. And as the plan moved from discussion to action, the operation entered its most critical phase. Not the search, not the discovery, but the attempt to bring 13 lives back through a path that had already proven how dangerous it could be. The first extraction began with a level of focus that left no room for error. Every detail had been planned, every movement considered, but once it started, everything depended on execution. Each boy would be guided through the cave individually, accompanied by experienced divers who understood the route, the risks, and the importance of keeping complete control at every moment. The journey out was not a single movement. It was a sequence of stages, each one demanding precision. Sections of the cave required full submersion, where visibility disappeared completely and direction could only be maintained by following the guideline. In other areas, the passages narrowed to the point where even breathing equipment had to be carefully maneuvered through tight spaces. For the boys, the experience was unlike anything they had ever faced. Darkness surrounded them. Water filled the passages. And every step forward depended on trust. Trust in the divers. Trust in the plan. Trust that the path ahead would lead them out. One by one, the process continued. Divers moved carefully, controlling pace, managing oxygen, ensuring that each stage of the journey was completed without disruption. Communication was limited, but coordination remained constant, supported by teams positioned along the route, ready to assist at critical points. Hours passed with each extraction. The distance that had taken days to reach now had to be reversed under even more difficult conditions. But slowly progress was made. One boy reached the entrance. Then another. And then another. Outside the cave, confirmation spread as each successful extraction was completed. The operation, once filled with uncertainty, began to show signs of success. But it was not over. Each remaining journey carried the same level of risk, the same level of uncertainty. The process continued over multiple days. Carefully. Deliberately. Without rushing. Because speed could lead to mistakes, and mistakes could not be corrected inside that environment. Rescuers remained focused, repeating the same sequence, maintaining the same level of control, ensuring that each boy was brought out safely before moving on to the next. Finally, the last stage of the operation began. The remaining members of the group, including the coach, were prepared for extraction. By this point, the process had been proven, but the risk had not changed. Every movement still mattered. Every decision still carried weight. And then one by one they emerged. From darkness into light. From silence into sound. From uncertainty into relief. All 13 were brought out alive. The cave, which had become a place of isolation and danger, was left behind as the operation came to an end. The outcome, once uncertain, had shifted completely. What had seemed nearly impossible had been achieved through coordination, discipline, and decisions made under pressure. But the story did not end with the rescue itself. Because what had happened inside that cave revealed something deeper. It showed how quickly conditions can change. How small decisions can lead to larger consequences. And how survival in extreme situations depends not only on strength, but on timing, preparation, and the ability to act when no perfect option exists. The Thai cave rescue became more than a story of survival. It became a reminder that even in the most controlled situations, uncertainty is always present. And when everything depends on a single path forward, success is not guaranteed. It has to be built, step by step, decision by decision, until the outcome finally changes. And in this case, against the odds, it did.